It is my pleasure to announce, I'm getting my notes, Esri is gonna help us level up and give us a virtual presentation. We're sad that you guys can't be with us in person, but we're really fortunate that you're here. Thank you. Take it away.
Thanks, Jenna, and congratulations. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for this presentation on new resources for on-demand data and solutions. I'm Jill Salago-Simmel. I'm the Senior Product Manager for Spatial Data Infrastructure and Inspire, the European SDI.
I am Dan Haig, Regional Manager with Esri in St. Louis. Hopefully you can see my screen.
I can see it.
Okay, good. I was not getting any indication that it was sharing. So, all right, great.
Perfect. Thanks,
Good
Dan.
to virtually join you. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, so in 1999, I attended my first NSGIC meeting in Chicago, and I couldn't have possibly imagined how much NSGIC would influence my career, my statewide family, my personal family, let's face it, and so forth. And so if this is your first time at NSGIC, I just want to say welcome and be warned. It's likely to make a lasting impression. On this 30th anniversary of NSGIC, I spent some time reflecting on the pioneering work of our predecessors who came together on visionary issues such as non-federal participation in the FGDC, state, regional, and local coordination, public-private partnerships, defining framework data for the nation, and how to finance it. And many of these vexing issues in different forms still exist today, and they extend beyond technology. Yet it's exciting for me to see how data and technology are supporting and facilitating critical communication and coordination and collaboration in ways that most of us never could possibly have imagined, or at least speaking for myself, that I couldn't imagine, as I was probably one of the later cell phone adopters. So Dan and I are going to talk about some of the latest resources that are at your disposal, and we'd like to consider some of the possibilities for the next decade and beyond. SDI are evolving. In the 1990s, they were born out of this recognized need for institutionalized data sharing in a time of ad hoc and bottom-up transfer and sneaker net. And in 1999, Indiana's statewide SDI implemented, coincidentally, with the help of Esri and my colleague Dan here, our first NSDI clearinghouse node.
Little did we know.
Little did we know. And let me say that our aspirations then were as big as they are today, but technology definitely wasn't ready for us yet. Like many SDI over the years, we established our statewide common framework for all units of government. And today, under the GIO leadership of Megan and our GIS Council, we aggregate local authoritative data from 92 counties into seamless statewide coverages, deliver high resolution imagery over 94,000 square kilometers to nearly 7 million residents, and a number of other activities that put those data to use. But it's been a long and arduous path to SDI development. And of course, SDI aren't static. They're constantly evolving. And you've all really experienced a similar journey, I know. The technology to support this, like we saw earlier with Michigan's SDI, well, I feel very optimistic about what this decade will bring. I tend to think of it as technology finally catching up with our aspirations. From local government, tribes, states, and nations, the past couple of years, we've seen an explosion of hub adoption. And this is really led by you all and the innovative ways that you're using Hub. And let me just apologize because I'm sure I missed a few, but what your work is showing us is that Hub is the destination for SDI engagement and delivery. And because of that, it's where we're putting a lot of attention. So I've found this quote from David on the NC OneMap experience really indicative that SDI portals used to be hard, and now it's so much easier, and they do so much more. Your experience is informing us as we move forward. You're establishing the patterns and practices that are the beacon for SDI around the world. So in this presentation, we're going to share a couple of those tips and good practices that we've observed, as well as some new resources that you can use within your state and to collaborate with others, like your adjacent neighbors and national partners. I'm going to turn it over to Dan to talk about open data and some of the new developments with Esri and our public-private partnerships. Dan?
All right, thanks, Jill. So Esri's made some significant changes in our partnership with federal government, making key data layers such as the National Geospatial Data Assets, NGDA, as you might hear it referred. We're making that data available now with open licenses and open standards. So let's take a look at some of these valuable resources that are available to you now and how you can leverage those in your own organization. So first off, and this was this is something that was announced this past summer. In partnership with federal agencies, we've opened access to dozens of high priority, high demand national data layers. Those are commonly called the National Geospatial Data Assets, or you might hear them referred to as the A16 layers. And this development is critical for decision-making in areas of national concern, like infrastructure development, disaster, and other man-made emergency response. And this activity makes the good work of federal agency NGDA partners available as scalable web services for the first time. So you can access this collection now. This collection of federal maps and apps is available to you in ArcGIS Online. It includes over 75 national geospatial data sets, things like dams, bridges, federal public lands, runways, rail nodes, and more. And these are regularly updated now from federal sources. They're available under the Creative Commons Attribution for International license. So anyone can use, adapt, and share that data with the proper attribution. And we're supporting interoperable access as well. So these data sets will be available both as REST services, so Esri REST services, and OGC API features. And I mentioned you can access these in ArcGIS Online, but you can also access these, or any user can access these data sets through a custom Explorer app that's available on the launch page. So you see that, if you see that link down at the bottom of my slide, that will take you to a launch page for the NGDA layers, and you can explore that, get a little bit more information. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's actually an Explorer app. So you can use this Explorer app to interact with any of these NGDA layers, either by agency name or theme. You can, of course, browse the map, zoom in on an area. So here we're looking at the area around Dallas-Fort Worth, and this is the default layer that loads an intermodal passenger connectivity database. And you'll notice there is a copy this map to clipboard graphic up in the upper right. You can go ahead and copy that URL, and you can leverage that URL in any of your existing websites. So share that, embed it on your hub page, zoomed into the area that you want with the data layer or layers that you're interested in. So very easy to access, as I mentioned, for anyone not necessarily an Esri user. Another layer that I'm really excited about is this Esri 10-meter global land cover layer. So this has been developed in partnership with the Impact Observatory. So the Impact Observatory's deep learning AI land classification model was used by training a data set of billions of human labeled image pixels that were developed by the National Geographic Society. And this global map was produced by applying this model to Sentinel-2 2020 scene collection on the Microsoft's planetary computer. So we processed over 400,000 Earth observations to complete this map. And it's a 10 class map of surface, including vegetation type, bare surface, crop, and urban areas. So I included a link. You can see again at the bottom of the slide. There's a beautiful story map that you can use to explore this global land cover layer. So I'm sort of I'm gonna kind of interact with that here. We're zooming in to Chicago, and you can see obviously standing out, highlighted in red. These built areas dominate the city's urban landscape. Can explore water off the coast, looking at Lake Michigan. We can see that, trees aren't necessarily a dominant or a predominant feature throughout much of Chicago, but here we're looking a little bit outside of the city in Cook County, looking at the Cook County Forest Preserve, and you can see those trees highlighted there. Grass, again, not necessarily a primary feature or primary land cover in much of Chicago. Here we're looking at a golf course in the city. Of course, cropland dominates much of the area to the west of Chicago. We can look at flooded vegetation as well. So it's scarce throughout most of the Midwest, but here we're looking at an area around the Kankakee River, which has some wetlands. And we can look at scrub and shrub lands or land classifications going over to going a little bit east over into the Hoosier State at the Indiana Dunes State Park Beach. And you can really see the bare ground highlighted or featured well at O'Hare Airport. So just kind of a quick tour of that story map. If you open that up, you can explore some other areas throughout the world, look at a comparison and get a better understanding of how this global land cover layer was put together. But one of the important things that I want to mention is that this is a layer that's it's a feature, or it's a layer that you can use in ArcGIS Online or use as part of any of other analytics that you want to perform using ArcGIS, and you can of course use it to make your own maps that you want to share through ArcGIS Online. So here, hopefully this is going to go ahead and launch. This is a land cover app, or an instant app that Jill made earlier. So it's looking at the World 2020 land cover with terrain. So bringing that land cover layer into the new map viewer in ArcGIS Online, overlaying that on top of the terrain hillshade, and then creating an instant app from that again can be easily shared with your users directly to your hub site. Just again, grabbing that URL and using that to embed inside of your hub.
And Dan, I laugh because this is where I say, if Jill can do it, anybody can do it. I think that just really shows how easy it really is.
And of course, reminds me of one of the last NISJIC meetings I was at. Beautiful, beautiful Salt Lake City. All right. Taking a look at another layer. Here we go. Whoops. Might help if this is why they discourage you from doing live demonstrations at NISJIC, isn't it? Let's go ahead and minimize that. We'll back up one slide. I should know. So as many of you know, we've had OpenStreetMap data in ArcGIS Online for some time, right? This is, of course, it's an editable map of the world, and we've provided that data as a base map for some time. So of course, over the past 7 years or so, we've been offering OpenStreetMap as referenced raster tiles, but now we're generating and hosting vector tiles. Those vector tiles are updated roughly every 3 weeks with the latest OSM data. And those base maps are great for high performance visualization. But last year, we introduced a new set of feature layers that provide access to the OpenStreetMap data. So these feature layers are hosted in ArcGIS Online and configured to scale. So they support both visualization and analysis, including the ability to extract selected areas of the data. So these layers are updated continuously with the latest edits to OpenStreetMap. They're updated dynamically in minutes. We actually use a dedicated instance, a dedicated ArcGIS Online organization to support or to host those layers. And they're updated with a replica of the differential changes in the OpenStreetMap data. You can browse those layers, those feature layers in an OpenStreetMap group inside of ArcGIS Online. So I'm gonna show you, here's an area I added. This is the OpenStreetMap Live for North American layer. See, I've highlighted, this is an area just south of my, the Esri office here in South St. Louis. And I noticed that, hey, there's a footpath that's supposed to be connecting the street over here to the loop trail inside in the park, just east of where I live. So I did something I've never done before. I actually registered as an OpenStreetMap editor, used the editing app, the OpenStreetMap editor edit app. I delineated this footpath here connecting the loop trail to the edge of the park boundary. I attributed it, I uploaded it, and literally within less than 5 minutes, that footway showed up inside of the that OpenStreetMap live feature layer, and I was able to see those changes that I made. So pretty exciting new capability, taking advantage of the kind of the rich set of features that are available to you in OpenStreetMap. One thing we wanted to touch on, and there's, Steve obviously did a great job of talking about the partnership around the National Address Database yesterday. So, not much more that we really need to say. We just think this is a fabulous partnership, being able to enable the NAD as a service. And, for the first time, it really brings to life that true local to state federal partnership, and making that data available as a seamless nationwide layer. So that's tremendously exciting. I think this is a pattern for how we can continue to work together to help authoritative owners and stewards own these services. And here, what you're looking at in that graphic is it's a boundary between Ohio and Indiana. That's in Union City, Indiana, and you can see how that national address database operates across borders. Obviously, that's critical for things like emergency response, but even economic development issues, right? So we know that our activities and your activities as GIOs don't necessarily stop at the state boundary, right? So having access to these seamless layers and have them perform and scale effectively is really critical. And we think this partnership is a great step forward in demonstrating that. Lastly, this is just a reminder. The raster base maps have moved to mature support. So if you're still using any of those raster base maps in your maps, your apps, just a friendly reminder, you want to migrate those to the new vector tile base maps. And I included there's a short link to this article, and you can get some more details on the corresponding vector tile base map to use for each of the base maps, the raster base maps that's retiring. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it back over to Jill.
All right, thanks, Dan. So geospatial infrastructure is supporting your organizations in a number of really powerful ways, and it's integrated. When you do so, it behind the scenes, of course, is integrating and interconnecting organizations across borders, jurisdictions, and sectors to help us work together and address our shared challenges. It's inherently multi-organizational as a system of systems. Together, when you're sharing your open data in your statewide portals and hubs, you're creating actionable web services that can be used in applications that make an impact around the world. For example, in your NG 911, broadband, redistricting, disaster recovery, and many, many other applications that address your statewide and national policy agendas. From a product perspective, ArcGIS content, like Dan just showed, and solutions provide resources that can supplement your data. For example, that NGDA data can be used within your applications. Subsets of that data can be extracted through views where you're still accessing that original source data. And valuable ArcGIS solutions can help you get more out of the data that you already have. Your system of record and multi-source data are managed and integrated in Pro and Enterprise, and ArcGIS Online is where you collaborate with partners and publish your web services. In Online, those shared data are highly scalable, performant, and secure. And then Hub is your delivery and engagement system for sharing open and secure content. Together, the ArcGIS system is an integrated system for modern SDI. And you all clearly understand this ArcGIS conceptual architecture much better than I do myself. Your organization in ArcGIS Online has members, and those members own items. Items can be shared with 0 to unlimited groups. Those groups can be indexed by one or more hubs. And when you add content to your group, your hub content library indexes its content. So I just want to make sure that as we're looking, we're going to step through just a couple of the different collaboration and sharing models. Because I think that all of you are using some of these patterns, but some of them might not be familiar to everyone. So ArcGIS provides many ways for you to collaborate with individuals and other organizations on data layers. Distributed collaboration allows your ArcGIS Online and enterprise organizations to share and sync content in groups. And it enables editing by your trusted collaborators that can be synced across your organizations. So new in Enterprise 10.9, we have introduced the bidirectional syncing that's available on a schedule. It's a valuable collaboration pattern for closely coupled organizations, such as satellite offices with a central office. In April of this year, partnered collaborations were introduced, allowing the ArcGIS Online organizations to work closely and securely with each other in groups. So establishing a partnered collaboration between two organizations creates what we call a formal connection between two organizations in a partnership. And each partner organization can have a collaborator who manages their own member participation. And members from partnered organizations then can edit and update content like web maps and apps in a shared update group. There's also less formal group-based sharing, and that's available for what I would consider more loosely coupled collaborations. So for example, the ability to add an individual named user to your group to share content with it. This is a pattern that I use myself fairly frequently. I want to invite partners from around the country to share curated content into our hub. So I invite named ArcGIS users to share items into my content group. I like to think of it as participating in online groups like we've all done within, even a meeting like this. An organization has a community group. They invite their neighbors, their trusted partners, to be members of the group. The partners accept that invitation and become group members. And now those partners can dynamically share their open and secure data as easily as checking a box to share the item with the group, with that data remaining under the control of the authoritative provider. The group dynamically references the content. The group becomes a shared data space for trusted partners with the dynamic content that's updated as the partners update their data, and group members get all of the updates in real time, having frictionless access to the group content. They can share items in that open and secure data space, as well as maps, apps, and other information products. The SDI coordinating body broadens access to all stakeholders through a community collaborative hub, and that hub then is the gateway to the community. Using hub, the collaborative shares data, respecting that the access privileges set by the partners, and engages with the stakeholders, including decision makers, developers, and the broader public. Hubs can also index any public group from any organization. So my neighbor and I both have hub sites. We want a hub for cross-border issues that index the content in both of our hubs. We can add each other's organization group content to our collaborative hub. If any of you are doing similar, we're really working now to document these use cases and good practices on a number of these patterns so that we can share them out more broadly. So let's take a quick look at how sharing through this group manager approach works, where we can facilitate sharing among neighbors. I go to my group manager when I'm in my hub admin console. Click to add groups to my hub. And here we see that there are over 10,000 groups within ArcGIS Online. And so let's just filter and search through that content to find the groups that we need. So I'm going to search for Alabama's community safety group, and I found it here, and I just click and add that. And then I'm going to look for Florida's statewide Department of Emergency Management hub group and add that. And I see that both of their groups are now added to my content, my groups library, my groups manager. And when I go to my content library, I see that those sources are listed there and that the content is indexed from both of those groups automatically without copying it in, rather it's indexing that content. I can search the content library and return results from any of the content that's within those groups. Here I see the Alabama hurricane evacuation routes. And when I click on that, I enter that fully immersed experience to be able to browse that content and put it to use. So I want to click, I want to use this, and I'm able to open up this content then directly in ArcGIS Online, as well as a number of other things we could do with it. And here we see it within our ArcGIS Online client and ready to be put to use. So let's stop there and start to look at how some of the new ways that we're supporting open standards and fair data principles. Open means many things to many people, and the way that I like to look at it is, while it's always about being interoperable, an open system should also embrace many perspectives. For some, that's being extensible, customizable, and flexible. For others, it means standard support, open source, and open APIs. And for others, it's about enterprise integration and pragmatic interoperability. We have an open design architecture that enables our users to work more easily within a heterogeneous IT environment, recognizing that our partners that are coming together are using different types of systems and data sources and applications. ArcGIS, of course, uses the GeoServices REST, which is an open specification, and I'm really excited to announce that this summer, we started our support for the OGC API features. And as that standard develops, we'll continue to enhance our support. So let's go back to our previous example where we're immersed in our hub and we've accessed content from our neighbors and partners. Here we're accessing the Florida evacuation routes. And again, I can click, I want to use this data. Now, downloads, of course, are available in Hub, but because these are web services, rather than downloading, we can actually just use those actionable data as services. I can click that GeoServices API resource and copy it, go back into my ArcGIS Online client and add that data. Simply click web service and paste that URL into my client, and it gets added to my map. Again, integrated and ready to be put to use. Now, the one thing that I just want to mention here is that as we're starting to explore these patterns and really pushing the envelope for what we can do with live web services, both within ArcGIS Online and within ArcGIS Hub, and bringing these neighbor data together, that we're really starting to, it's revealing some of those good practices that would be helpful for multi-state collaboration. So for example, and not to point fingers at all, because we see this everywhere, and I think it's really something that we could provide, work together and provide good practices for data governance. We see as we bring together data from neighbors, from neighboring states, from neighboring countries, that oftentimes simple data governance practices are not in place. So for instance, simple naming conventions, so that when you go in and need to add parcel layers from your surrounding states, for example, to address something that's a regional issue, that not every layer is named parcels. I'm very interested to hear how we can work together and what we could do to help to document and make those good practices more broadly available. One of those things that's a perpetual good practice in the community is metadata. And I want to step back for just a moment and consider within this dimension of metadata, another aspect of the open platform. And that is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, or FAIR data principles. Because these are really critical to our SDI and building an integrated geospatial infrastructure. We know your data never stand alone, and that metadata are the key information that describes your data. And I'm excited about how today data don't live alone. They live with the data. They can flow through this system and power your search and curated catalogs. If you haven't already, using your ArcGIS Online organization, enable metadata for your organization, because when you do, all kinds of magic happens to help make your data fair. Your data are findable when they're richly described by metadata, and this is something that we've all known for a long time as we don't duck metadata, right? But your geospatial data are more accessible in machine readable formats when the metadata flow through the platform and comply with accessibility guidelines as well. Your data are interoperable when published and shared using international open standards. We are putting together good practices right now for publishing your data in additional distributions that support these OGC specifications. And of course, your geospatial data are more reusable when they're released with clear and accessible data usage licenses, which is one of the things that I'm most excited about with the new data partnerships and data sharing that Dan talked about earlier. So FAIR data help power this interconnected web of data and services to derive information and insights. And those metadata really help so that the data can flow through the platform so you can build applications that help engage your communities of interest. The way that we are looking at metadata flow today is your metadata attached to your data sets within ArcGIS Pro or Enterprise can flow through automatically through to online or your ArcGIS sites. And through the online editor, it can be updated and also flow through to the ArcGIS hub sites. We know it's not perfect. Certainly that metadata flow through the platform is better than it has ever been in the past. But I wanted to let you guys know that we're really making a renewed commitment to how we support metadata. It's a long-term commitment. We're looking at from soup to nuts, how can we reinforce these new patterns and practices and support metadata in a very holistic way. So it's not going to happen fast because there are a lot of pieces to that puzzle, but I do want to convey that that we're looking very seriously and have heard you in your requests for supporting metadata more holistically. And in that metadata flow across the platform, there's one more piece of that I want to highlight, and that is the support for data catalog vocabulary, DCAT AP. In this example, we see Loudoun County's GeoHub, and they're making their data accessible to all of their stakeholders in, the way I look at it, in three different ways. First is through their consumable maps and apps. They're making their data available through their initiatives first, and highly consumable for non-technical audiences. Second, they're making their data available through APIs and feature services, download and view services. And third, federating their catalog through DCAT AP, or DCAT, the US data.gov standard for the data.gov catalog. And that DCAT feed is automatically generated with your beautifully curated content with Hub. So with that, I want to turn it over to Dan again to talk about how solutions can help you jumpstart not only your own, but also partner agencies.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. So I want to pivot just a little bit. I mean, we talked a lot about data, a lot about sharing and collaboration with data. But I want to talk a little bit about solutions and putting some of that awesome data that you're all developing to use. So as many of you are aware, ArcGIS includes a whole series of solutions that align with the business needs of state and local government. And not only are these solutions that support business needs of state and local government, I think it's important to keep in mind that they represent complete and best practice implementations of the ArcGIS system. So these are industry-specific solutions, configurations of ArcGIS that are really designed to help you improve operations, provide insight, and enhance services. And these solutions just come with the Esri software that you're already licensing, and they're fully supported. So how cool is that? One of the solutions that has actually, it's been out for a while, but we updated it over the summer. So we released a new version of the damage assessment solution this past summer, and we updated it, improved it so that it better aligns with FEMA programs. It includes a comprehensive set of capabilities, right? So you can do things like collect damage report, assign initial damage assessments, monitor the impact of a disaster on the community, and brief internal stakeholders, and then share that information out to the public. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, go sort of go rogue a little bit, and I am going to open up a story map. So you know, we're not going to go through, we're not going to demonstrate the full solution, but I just wanted to highlight or scroll through this story map a little bit that gives you some background on the use, the value of this damage assessment solution and some of its key components, right? So there's a damage assessment photo viewer application. The public can submit damage reports through Survey 123. There's a windshield damage report application, right? So this is quick capture that is used for submitting those windshield damage reports. And then there's a manager application, right? So we have an operational view of those assessments as they're coming in. And then of course, we need to conduct damage assessment. And then there's a hub site that brings all of these applications together. So, you know, it's important to point out that, you know, again, not only does this solution, not only is it highly functional, supporting the needs of state business and even local emergency management during the time of a disaster. And even if it's not a solution that fully meets your needs, the solution itself is, again, this great representation of how the ArcGIS system can be fully deployed to support a comprehensive workflow in state or local government. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize my browser now and advance one more slide and touch on another solution. So the emergency debris management is a new solution that, again, we released earlier this summer. And this is a solution that is really focused on expediting the initial debris clearance, right? Assessing the volume of debris and monitoring the removal of debris that's accumulated on roads, right-of-ways, and public facilities. I mean, we all saw, you know, the photos of the devastation, you know, due to Hurricane Ida. And obviously that, you know, one of the first steps or one of the real threats to public safety is that debris. So it's critical that debris is cleared in a very timely fashion, so we can undertake the rest of the recovery process. And again, there's a great story map that you can use to understand more about the different components, the different applications that comprise that solution. And again, I know this is a solution that is more likely going to fit the needs of, say, a local government, but it's a tremendous way to help you understand how the ArcGIS system can be configured and how you can start to take advantage of some of that rich data that you are starting to that you're pulling together from a statewide perspective or even a national perspective. So definitely check out those story maps to help understand more about those solutions when you have some time. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Jill to wrap up.
Thanks, Dan. I think it's been a really exciting year to see these new products, solutions, support, and services that are really uplifting and bringing together capabilities for collaboration, sharing, and new ways of putting data to use. And the Esri website, as you're probably familiar with, has a wealth of industry-focused resources. This week, I'm really excited to announce that we have a new site for modern SDI to help connect you with resources, user stories, and good practices around those pillars of collaborative governance, data and technology, engagement, and capacity building. The examples that were contained in this presentation can all be found on this new site, which will continue to grow over time. And let me just close by asking you, what would help? Would you like to work together to document these good practices for sharing and collaboration? And what resources would you find most valuable? Thanks. I think we'll close out by asking, opening up a poll question, which is really what topics would provide you with the most value as we're looking at deep dive workshops in the coming year.
Thank you both. That was really informative and amazing. Unfortunately, we do not have time for additional questions, so I would encourage everyone to engage on my NISJIC and continue the conversation. I'm sure some of you have questions, and Jill and Dan will happily answer those, so reach out and continue.